4 months have now passed since Titan Comics and Heroic Signature launched their long-awaited vision of Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian as a monthly comic book. And in these 4 months, it can be said quite clearly, all the wishes of the fans regarding a new Conan comic series have actually been fulfilled. The expectations were quite high for the project. After Titan Comics and Heroic Signatures, as holders of the Conan license, were able to win over Jim Zub, a writer who had already written the best issues in the previous Marvel run. The fact that they were able to get Roberto De la Torre on board, an artist who is highly regarded within the fandom and considered to be a legitimate successor to iconic pencil wielder John Buscema, was certainly not detrimental to the hype. Before we turn our attention to the current run, let's look back a few years to see how Conan has fared in the world of comics so far. In 2019, after a long period of abstinence, Marvel brought the Conan license back to itself, which triggered nostalgic joy, but also skepticism among many fans. Joy on one hand, because it was Marvel who pushed the character to great popularity back in the 70s, far beyond the literary audience off to old pulp magazines. And skeptical because times had changed since then, and a bare-chested womanizer and thug like Conan no longer fits in that well with the politically correct and sanitized Marvel program of current times. The skeptics were to be proven partly right. Marvel played it safe, and the writers did not really know what to do with this somewhat outdated character, which is why Marvel's vision seemed rather tame and restrained. It lacked a bit of the grit, the rough and unpolished nature of past iterations, and of course the savage don't-take-shit attitude of Howard's original storytelling. Of course, as a male power fantasy, Conan was always a bit sexist too. Feminist sensibilities weren't part of the equation in Howard's 1930s Texan mindset, nor in prehistoric Hyboria, where rape and murder is as common as xenophobia. A slap on the barmaid's butt was as normal for Conan as dealing the killing blow to his enemies with his sword. That this wouldn't fly at current Marvel due to modern sensitivities was clear from the start. But even beyond that, the whole thing seemed uninspired and unimaginative for long stretches. The first half of the run in particular tried desperately to be epic and neglected the quick and dirty storytelling of the pulp template. As a result, the Marvel run is now considered solid at best. Undisputed among fans, however, is the responsibility of Jim Zub for the best issues in that run, who, similar to Roy Thomas before in the 70s, understood Conan as a character very well and knew how to implement him with respect to his vision of Robert E. Howard. I'm thinking here, for example, of the fantastic story arc Conan the Gambler, which introduces Conan to the dark underbelly of Shedazar the Wicked. Or the ongoing narrative from issue 15, Into the Crucible. These were very good Conan yarns penned down by Zub. That also would have been successful as higher-class pastiches, if ever to be printed in a book format. And that's why it was a wise choice that Titan Comics and Heroic Signatures chose Jim Zub for a new edition of the comics. I can tell you right now, it was a decision that paid off. 4 months have passed since the first issue and the first story arc is now complete. After 4 issues, we have a clear picture of the vision of Jim Zub and Heroic Signatures. It can be said with some certainty that expectations have been exceeded after all. Not only mine, but the feedback from the rest of the fandom has been overwhelmingly positive. On the one hand, of course, this is due to Jim Zub's qualities as a writer and plotter, who, even more so than with Marvel, uses language that isn't ashamed to come across as antiquated and verbose here and there, which only adds to the pulpy charm oft he yarn. The tale told by Zub is both classic Conan and a new approach at connecting the different timelines in Robert E. Howard's shared mythology. When a certain barbarian king gets mentioned in issue 4, it's clear that this take on the barbarian is more than just a quick cash grab. Zub is in it for the long game, and it's obvious that he'll dive deep into all the lore present at this point in time. Howard made it clear again and again how important the Picts are in his shared mythology, and so it also doesn't come as a surprise when Conan has a supernatural encounter with another hero that is quite familiar to the avid Howard reader. Apart from this, Zub gives it all to be as true as possible, to make the story feel like something from the pulp days of old, with lots of tropes beloved and requested by Conan fans. In 4 issues, you'll find seedy taverns, bloody battles, supernatural foes, dimly lit dungeons to delve into, wicked magic and sexual encounters. Set shortly after the raid on Venarium, Conan breaks away from a band of mercenaries he fought with, only to find himself in the midst of a deadly scourge plaguing the borderlands between Cimmeria and Aquilonia. A mysterious solstice darkens the sky, and the undead walk the earth, killing everyone in their path. To save his hide, and the ones of his Cimmerian brethren, Conan teams up with the Pictish woman Brissa, who serves both as a capable warrior and as love interest for Conan. Together, they hunt down the source of this evil and stumble upon a foe, older than even the Hyborian age. Mention must also be made of De la Torre's fantastic artwork, which is reminiscent of John Buscema, but also manages to capture the savage potency of Frazetta. And so, of course, it's not surprising that the Titan series has enjoyed great commercial popularity. Issue 1 is already in its 5th reprint, and subsequent issues have already been reprinted in increasing numbers to meet the growing demand. Perhaps the last time there was such hype on Conan comics was in the early 2000s, when Dark Horse held the license and, with Cary Nord as artist and Kurt Busiek as writer, was able to breathe new life into the character after years of abstinence on the comics market. And today, once again, the hype is justified, because the first 4 issues are Conan-best comic art that can compete with the great works of the 70s or even the opulent King Conan comics by Truman and Jarello. A must-buy.